Hey, Magnetites, and yes, that's my new word for Megaten enthusiasts and Megaten gamers, and Persona gamers, and all of the above dealing with an all-encompassing Megaten. You are now Magnetites. If you only play Persona, you might be wondering what that means. Magnetite is something that you need in the old school SMT games and Megaten games in order to have demons out. So there's like a cost associated. It's another strategic portion to the older games, and it's called Magnetite. So Magnetite is just a nickname that I want to give the Megaten community when I'm speaking to all of you Magnetites. Anyway, so Magnetites, I was thinking to myself after going through some older Megaten YouTuber stuff that I've seen other people post, and I noticed there's a lot of stuff based on what game should I start if I decide to pick up a Megaten game, something within the series. Because there really is a lot of areas to start with, and it really depends on the gamer. Now, if you are someone who is maybe a little bit older, you've played a lot of, let's say, Super Nintendo RPGs, maybe you grew up in the Golden Age, as they call it. If that's the case, it's going to be different recommendation-wise compared to if you are maybe started video games or something like, Final Fantasy VII was like your first RPG. Then I might have to sway in a different direction. And then further still is like if Dragon Quest, 8 was your first go-to, or 9 or 10, then we're looking at like PS2 era gaming, and that changes it up as well. But just for the sake of, let's say, everyone's in the same bubble, when it comes to age and frame of reference, I guess, and graphical frame of reference, I'm going to try just thinking about gameplay and ease of playability. So I've always thought that a great place to start playing Megaten games is within the PS2 lineup. Now, that's not to say that it isn't a little bit difficult to go backwards, because it is. As someone who started with Persona 3, SMT Nocturne, and Persona 4, I can say that it's hard to go backwards. It's not a simple thing. Because you're accustomed to a 3D third-person point of view, and in most of the cases of future games, it's first-person dungeon crawling style, and you don't get the beauty that you would get in a Nocturne or a Persona 3. So there are many times where I would say, if you think that you're going to gravitate strongly to these games like I have, I might recommend something different, but I want to get you from casual to Megaten nut. So I'm gonna have to start you guys off with Persona 3. And the reason behind that is because Persona 3, it's definitely not a cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination. However, it tones back some of the difficulty that you might feel in a Nocturne or an older Persona game. And the reason being is that the social links, which are also part of the fun, they help you utilize certain demons prior to what your level is. And so just to make sense of that, social links, which I'm sure people have played, most people have played Persona, but they help you get personas that are higher than, let's say, your user's level, because of the social link status increasing or buffing the overall level of your persona. And so, with that being said, though the game can be difficult, and though there is a lot of construction and figuring things out, I think this actually gives you a good point of reference, and you're going to have a lot of fun. It's also not 100% like driven to the point of where the story is a certain way, and it's just that. It's a little bit more open world, and you can have a little bit more fun with it from a story narrative, especially when you want something character driven. I would say that this is a great place to begin because it gets you accustomed to the play style of most Megaten games, as well as the fusion basics. It helps you out with skills and utilizing skills for your demons. It helps you figure out the names of spells and attacks. And it overall gives you a great point of reference when you're getting into this phenomenal series. So I would say on top of that, you get the beauty of what PS2 was able to really mainstay with from around 2001 to about 2008. And the graphics are nice. You're going to enjoy them. Now, if you've played Persona 5, you may feel a little shafted. But if you're looking for a place to begin, I would say start with Persona 3. Now, theoretically here you might think, well, then I guess I should go from Persona 3 to 4 to 5. And yeah, there could be a point made for that, depending on how much you really enjoyed the Persona series as a whole. However, I would go as far as to say that it might be in your best interest to try to stay within that PS2 caliber. And what that means is you might want to venture out into Digital Devil Saga and Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, as well as the Raido games. Because after a while, if you just beat Persona 3, you're either going to want more, or you're going to want a little bit of a change of pace. You know, you get exhausted from a game. Going to SMT3 Nocturne is going to give you a completely different tone, to where you're not going to feel like you're just rehashing Persona 3. You're going to feel like you're playing a somewhat different game. And in fact, there are a lot of differences. The press turn system is altered to fit the game slightly differently. I don't remember if it's that you get half a turn as opposed to a full turn and things like that. On top of that, you're also going into a game that's more story-driven from the concept of your environment, as opposed to story-driven based on characters. In fact, this is probably the least character-driven SMT game, and yet it works extremely well. I mean, extremely well. So, that could be a great change of pace. And then there's some people who maybe are not huge into JRPGs. Maybe that's never really been your bread and butter, or maybe you grew up in this newer age of, like, full-fledged everything's an action RPG. In that case, I would recommend the Raido Kuzunoa games. Reason being is that it infuses Megaten properties with demon fusion, skill changing, and inheritance, and many other portions of weakness and things like that are in all the Megaten games. But it gives you an action-based system that's fun, above the level of hack and slash, and really gives you the opportunity to have a good time with the demon elements. So, in my mind, from that respect, I would say that the Raido Kuzunoa games are a great change of pace. Then lastly, I would say that once you've done that, you can full circle it. You can go to Digital Devil Saga and get a game that's a bit more akin to Final Fantasy X, to be honest. Due to the way that the skill setup and the system as a whole works, you're going to feel like, I forget what the system was called. I think it was a ring system in Final Fantasy X. And this is basically the same thing, and it's called, I believe, a karma system. And so, from there, you're going to be able to discover what works best for you. And in doing so, I think it's easy to say that that's going to be a good change of pace as well, and it's going to keep you with something maybe a little more familiarity. That's why I would recommend that game interchangeably with these. Now, I think rounding out everything with Persona 4, especially if you really enjoyed Persona 3, is going to be a great way to finish off your PS2 experience. And so I would have to say that that would probably be what the lineup I would do in that order, because rounding it out with Persona 4, which is probably the most polished of all the PS2 games, is going to make you feel like one, you get a breather from the difficulty in the other SMT games, because I would say Persona 4 is actually easier than Persona 3. And it's just a great fun way to round out everything when you might be getting a little Megaten exhaustion. Once you've completed that, I would recommend taking a dive into the SNES games and the 3DS games. But I think you should play the SNES games first, because it gives you an ability to jump from SMT1, SMT2, or Kayuyaku, Megami Tensei 1 and 2, which is the original 2 games on Super Nintendo. Jumping from those games to something like SMT4 or Strange Journey Redux, you actually see the dungeon crawler aspect, and you get a little bit more of the concept of the original games, and it seems like a huge upgrade. And so I'd say getting an upgrade from SMT 1 and 2 to Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey is a lot of fun. Also, playing Majin Tensei 1 and 2, especially 2, it's a fucking gem. Excuse my language. It is so fun. It is so fun and so different, and doesn't feel watered down as a Super Nintendo game at all. And yeah, I mean, I would say that'll be my focal point for today. My next video, I'll be rounding out more of, going more depth on the SNES games and the 3DS games. And then I think we'll finish it off with the PS1 era games and some of the outliers on other systems. All right, well, that's today's video. I'll speak to you later, Magnetites.